So when it comes to marriage nowadays, to some extent, or to a great extent, in the church, we've really kind of bought into what the culture thinks of marriage, or we've departed so much of what is a biblical view of marriage that we don't look too dissimilar from the culture. So for instance, such is the cultural malaise now of a promotion towards singleness, towards an attack on marriage, a redefinition of marriage with so-called gay marriage. It's buying into, obviously, Satan's hatred of marriage, which was so from the beginning. He attacked the marriage of Adam and Eve, obviously, brought them both into sin through temptation, and there was the fall of mankind. But what we've got now is, yes, singleness is a commendable state, according to Paul in 1 Corinthians 7. That is biblical singleness, not just singleness. And what we're seeing very much, I think, in the church is unbiblical singleness, where young men and young women are just like lazing about in a non-committal state. Particularly young men would think, oh, well, I don't really want that responsibility of marriage and children yet. I just want to sort of wait a little bit. And so there's this so-called adolescence, and they're 30 years old, living in their mother's basement playing PlayStation. And then you have this, this swathe of young Christian women that would maybe like a husband, and yet they're a bit picky. They're perfectionists. So then in the end, no man will ever measure up for them. And so between these two of kind of laziness and a perfectionist attitude, we don't have the marriages we ought to be having. But if I want to go back a step further, is we're not training our children for marriage. This is the thing. When would you, if you say to a young 15-year-old guy, Christian guy, say, what do you want to do when you're older? When would that young Christian guy say, I want to go get me a wife and have some children, right? They might say, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a sportsman or a plumber or whatever it might be. And that's fine, but it's not even on their radar to go get a wife and have children. Similarly with a young woman, what do you want to be when you're older? I'd love to have a husband and children and build a home. They might say the same things, the sports, the doctor, the law. And there's anything wrong with those things, but it's not on the radar. Yet it was on God's radar for creation. He created the man. He said, here's a job, here's a wife. Have some children. That's from the beginning of creation. And so as parents, we need to be training our young boys and young girls. We need to be evangelizing them first. They're not born Christians. They need to be saved, yeah? You don't disciple your children first, you evangelize them. You disciple a disciple. Now, evangelism involves teaching and instruction, but it has that gospel content. They need to be saved. That's the angle all the time, right? Once saved, then you'll bring them up to be, obviously, and all the time, to be a young man, a young woman, a young Christian man, a young Christian woman. And with that in mind, part of that is aiming towards being a husband and a father, or a wife and a mother, preparing them, angling them towards those ends. Obviously, they're modeling it in your own marriage. Many, marriages just come together because I love her and she loves me, and there's no understanding of the deeper meaning of marriage. Even that creation call of to leave your family and find a wife, a helper for me in God's mission for me and for us in the world. So it becomes a very sentimental kind of love. Not wrong to love your spouse, but a sentimental kind of love, not built in with God's mission in mind. Similarly with children, we just want to have children because they're cute and we think we're almost entitled to have them, not seeing them as these are God's image bearers and potential followers of Jesus Christ. So this kind of evangelism thing. So that one of God's big evangelism mission strategies is the Christian home, is the Christian family. And still nowadays, I think statistics will still probably prove that more conversions happen through Christian homes where husbands and wives are bringing their children up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord, knowing the Lord is sovereign in salvation. More conversions still happen in Christian homes even than outside. And so that then when you see marriage then as this picture of Christ and the church, the gospel picture in marriage then becomes gospel propagation in childbearing and child raising, even as we then raise converted children who go on then to have Christian families and homes and do the same with their children. So getting back to God-centeredness in all that we do and think is very much the need with regards to marriage and children, and seeing it in God's glory and God's mission sense. And I think if we can get a grip of that, we'd see a real change in the church. And I think as well, even in terms of, like, I've spoken about conversions through Christian families actually become a great witness to non-Christians as well. When you bring non-Christians into a Christian family, you see a husband love his wife like that, and a wife respect her husband like that, and children honor their mother and father, and there's Christian conversation in the home. What a witness that is then to, you know, your children's non-Christian friends who come over for dinner, or your neighbors who come in. And so it becomes a little hook for the gospel then to even evangelize your neighbors and friends.